following is a presentation of the High Spot Podcast. Making their way to the ring, talking about the world of professional wrestling, the team of Jeff Martin and the Trendsetter, Bryan Burga, the Jersey Wrecking Crew.
What is going on, guys? You're listening to the High Spot Podcast on BodySlam.net. I am Jeff Martin, and I am so proud to welcome back my tag team partner, the other half of the Jersey Wrecking Crew, Bryan Burga. He will join us in just a few seconds. We got a great show for you today. Brandon Cutler of AEW will join us. He will be a guest on the show. Trendsetter, it is Double or Nothing month. We are just a few weeks now from Double or Nothing in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, AEW's inaugural show. First and foremost, though, guys, follow us on all our social media at iSpot Podcast and listen to us on BodySlam.net and on iTunes, and where all podcast platforms are available. Trendsetter, you are back. I did not disclose what happened to you, but I did wish you a speedy recovery. How are you feeling, man? How is everything going? Are you back to being the Trendsetter?
I don't know if I'm back to being the Trendsetter, but I am feeling a lot better, Jeff. Thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. You actually made me believe you meant it, so it really means a lot that you did.
Man.
Did a great show, and I'm not just blowing smoke up just you know what, because I wasn't here last week. I think you did a great job solo. It made me question, what's the point of me being here, Jeff? You did a great job solo, talking about all the events that happened, in the past weeks, and you're right, Jeff. We're building up to something pretty exciting. We spoke previously before about, WrestleMania season is just around the corner and the excitement of WrestleMania season. But this is a different type of excitement now, because it's the first of you don't get many firsts in pro wrestling. This is the first event that's ever going to happen now with AEW, brand new promotion, has so much momentum behind it, so much enthusiasm. And you know what? For most cases, Jeff, when we talk about like a WrestleMania or pay-per-view, whether it be WWE or any type of, New Japan, Impact, stuff like that, Ring of Honor, you always have the fear is going to live up to the billing. But here's the thing. I don't think there's that fear anymore. I think people don't even care about, will it knock out of the park? They just want something different, and you see the enthusiasm, especially talking to Brandon.
Well, last week we talked about the ratings and how WWE is in a free fall as far as that's concerned, and what were some of the solutions, and we'll delve into that when we do our new segment here to open up the show, Top 5 Pro Wrestling Headlines, which I feel combines everything of this past week, and we're able to talk about it and still have time to, do some other things. At the end of the interview with Brandon Cutler, though, we will have our segment that I've been teasing for a while, is the top 5 tag teams that are currently not in WWE. I have my list. Trendsetter's got a couple names in mind for himself, so we'll get into that in a very jam-packed show. But first and foremost, Trendsetter, I just want to, talk to you about the ratings for a little bit and how, wrestling right now, people think it's in a huge boom. AEW is expecting that people are going to, go watch their product. But right now, WWE kind of has an issue with this. Just want to, range your thoughts since you weren't here last week.
Well, my thoughts on the ratings, and we kind of spoke about it a little bit before we did the show, though, is this is my viewpoint, Jeff, on the ratings. Numbers can be looked at in one of two ways. You can look at them for what they are, for face value, but also they can be manipulated in a lot of ways, too, to favor you as well. There's always so many excuses to go about the reasons why certain numbers are hit at certain times, whether it be time of the seasons, whether you're competing with other sports outside of sports entertainment. But here's my ultimate thing, though, and just looking at it from the vantage point of the fan, I've spoken about previously before. If you're not invested in what you're watching, you'll probably watch it because everybody's so used to watching WWE programming. It becomes a part of our lives, of Jeff and I, because we'll watch Raw. We'll sit there, believe it or not, during a 3-hour Raw, as difficult it is sometimes. I mean, sometimes I'll flip the channels, go through a SmackDown, watch NXT every once in a while now, not as much, but still keep in touch with what they're doing. So it'll always be around us. But in terms of the anticipation, the build-up, the overall investment as a fan, it's hard to do that right now. I think the ratings are reflection of that, because you have a huge talent roster, which WWE has. They've acquired so much talent, but unfortunately, when you don't do anything with it, that's where the fans right now are just getting frustrated. We're like, well, if you're not willing to show us the things that we want to see, which you brought up a great clip last week with Vince McMahon, Triple H, Shane, Stephanie saying, we're going to give you, the fans, what you want to see. We're going to make you the authority. Well, it was nice for show, but the track record's proven.
Did they
it's not
really
working.
Do that? I think they make you think like you're in control of the show, but technically you're not. And it comes back to the same
didn't
thing.
do it.
What happened a few weeks later? Shane McMahon now is a tyrant on SmackDown Live. Oh, he's now the best in the world, attacking The Miz, going and attacking Roman Reigns with the B team. I mean, like, it is just, to me, just, you know, a pile of crap and BS, because, you know, they want to make it seem like you're in control, but it's the same old stuff being ingested into you.
And the same old stuff that's being ingested, the fact that whenever ratings are falling or things aren't going the way they want to perceive in terms of storyline, whoever they're trying to build up or take down, it's the mere fact that the McMahons, and now Triple H, who's part of the McMahons, always have to involve themselves in the storyline. It doesn't work anymore in this day and age. It worked during the Austin McMahon era, but when you keep doing it and rehashing it and repackaging it to something else, it's just the same thing. We don't need to see Shane McMahon on TV anymore, in my opinion. I mean, if you want to, as an authority figure, sure. Stephanie, the same thing. Vince coming out and doing a promo last week on Raw on Monday, and
it was tough to watch.
It was tough to watch.
He lost a lot on his fastball.
Yeah, I mean, people want to complain, oh, has Jim Ross lost a step commentating? Well, the fair enough to say is Vince has lost a step in terms of relating, connecting with the audience, because that promo was absolutely brutal.
Yeah,
it was brutal. The message wasn't brought across, and we'll dive into what he said, but at the same time, Jeff, it seems like they're just reaching for things and throwing things out there to see if they work, and it's kind of sad, the mere fact that a company like this, publicly owned, did a major deal for several networks they're going to be airing, did a deal for Fox Sports. You know, it's amazing that this is what they're putting out there right now. And it's kind of sad, too, the mere fact that now most people, and they're falling into this issue where other people are saying, you know what, I don't need to watch this. I'm going to click off and watch something else. And you have the ability to do it now.
Yeah, especially if they're going to watch the highlights on either YouTube or they're going to, catch it on some other platform. So it really is a tough time, quite a puzzling time for WWE. And, of course, they're going to have to solve this by October, because that is when the switch to Fox for SmackDown Live starts. And, from what
I don't want to think about October right now.
Yeah, from all accounts, though, Fox is demanding high standards for SmackDown Live. They have to hit 3.0. Now, these are rumors, but if they have to hit 3.0 ratings in order to avoid cancellation, it's going to be, pretty, steep hill for them to try to climb every single Friday night. So, all right, Trendsetter. So let's go with the first headline here. Vince McMahon has invoked the wild card rule in which up to 4 members of Raw or SmackDown Live can cross brands on a given episode, as we saw this past week, which only begs to ask the question, do we really need to have this brand split anymore? Plus, there are several reports circulating that Fox and NBC Universal have already asked WWE to get rid of the brand split, thus why probably Mr. McMahon came up with this wild card rule. I really think that the brand split should be no more. One funny thing that I always go back to is JBL. When he supported the brand split, he's because, well, you need 2 touring brands. You need one Raw and one on SmackDown. You need to create talent. WWE needs to make talent. It's not about talent right now when you're focused on making money and ratings. So there is no time. You'd like to think that there's a chance to build and grow characters, but now in the high demand for WWE and the huge money game that they have now with Fox, I don't think that there's time to do that anymore. Thus, I think they have a boatload of talent, but they can't really, afford to, lose out on the ratings by giving them a chances. Guys like Mustafa Ali, who had a nice little run, but then they ended up pushing it back, maybe due to injury or so. But guys just don't get pushed here. They don't get a chance to have the ball and roll with it. That's why I think the brand split is totally unnecessary, and they should get rid of it.
Well, first of all, it's a great JBL impression, I have to say, first and foremost.
I tried to, the brands and, SmackDown Live.
No, but you're right. That's pretty much cookie cutter of what he said. But the thing was, back then when he mentioned that.
I wish I had that audio. I could not find it. It would have been great to have it here. But, yeah, that's like a synopsis of what he said.
Yeah, it's a synopsis of what he said. But basically, it was true because at that time, Jeff, the brand split was done because there was no other competition out there. So you had to develop 2 competing brands under the same umbrella WWE to allow, for example, the Randy Ortons, the John Cenas to kind of develop themselves into stars. But nowadays, you have the Performance Center. You have NXT, which you have the ability of building stars. And, I can get into the whole thing of that in terms of building new stars. My thing, you're really basically just repackaging the existing stars that have made a name for themselves elsewhere. But no need to dive into that. But you're right. I mean, The mere fact of this genius idea, I'm a genius, I come up with a wild card idea. Brilliant. It's not brilliant. It's just logical. And I know a lot of people say you can't put logic into professional wrestling or sports entertainment, whichever one you want to call it, but it is logic right now. Your roster is huge, which you can do a brand split, but it doesn't make sense because the mere fact that every single event you have, whether it be a Money in the Bank ladder match, a WrestleMania, a Survivor Series, a SummerSlam, etc., all the brands are together on the same show. It's not like one particular event for exclusive brand anymore. They're not doing that. So there is no sense of, for example, Roman Reigns, who's been 2 weeks off of Raw, now coming Raw. There's no excitement there because we just saw him on Raw.
Yeah, and also, too, is that one brand is going to have Roman Reigns and the other one's not going to. And if SmackDown Live asks, why is it that Roman Reigns isn't on SmackDown Live, it's going to be a huge issue. Why is Brock Lesnar only on Raw? Why is Ronda Rousey only on Raw? Why does SmackDown Live not get these superstars? And when you get involved in high money stakes in networks,
yeah,
right, you're going to go through this. They're going to want the very best, and they should be given the very best for what they're paying for. So that is why I believe that the brand split should be dissolved as of today. Because think about this. You watch SmackDown Live, in the ring you had Kofi, Xavier Woods, Sami Zayn, and AJ Styles, and you had to think for your second, who's the guy on Raw? I could not even keep track of who's on which show.
But it wasn't because you couldn't tell in terms of talent. Oh, it's just talent. It didn't matter anymore. Because we had something called WrestleMania season not too long ago where everybody was interconnected. People showed up on Raw and SmackDown with no issue. The brand split just recently happened, the Superstar Shakeup. And you know what? It was all for nothing. It was a farce. That's a new word I'm using for it because
it's a farce.
It's a farce because it meant nothing in my opinion. So basically, I think this is signs indicating that there will be no longer no brand split. My question though is, Jeff, eventually as you move on into the weeks leading up to what happens down the road, is there need anymore for different championships on different brands? Do we need the Universal WWE Championship? Do we combine that again? Do we need, not again, but do we combine those two titles? Do you combine the U.S. Intercontinental title, which two titles have not been used?
The WWE Championship was defended twice. And the Universal Championship, oh my God, it needs to be defended. Yeah. Oh, I need to see it. Oh, Brock Lesnar was killing the sport. He was killing the Universal Championship. Oh, wait a minute. It wasn't defended on either show. So give me a break on that. Yes, there should be consolidation, and I think that there should be one champion. There should be an Intercontinental and maybe United States, or you could, consolidate the two, have a women's tag team championship, have one women's championship, and let me tell you something, it would be less confusing because it seems like every pay-per-view has like 10 championship matches, and that just can't be. All right, Trendsetter, earlier this week it was reported that Jon Moxley, that artist formerly known as Dean Ambrose, would be taking indie bookings in June, and that Impact Wrestling has a pretty good chance of signing Moxley. Everyone thinks it's inevitable that the former Dean Ambrose character will debut at AEW in his hometown of Las Vegas at Double or Nothing, but could it be just a smokescreen, or does Impact Wrestling, in your mind, have a great chance to sign Jon Moxley?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it'd be a huge shock if Jon Moxley goes over to Impact, but what a great maneuver in terms of that promo we saw that was on YouTube that he put out there and posted on social media. It just begs us to talk about the mere fact, can he show up at AEW? Will he show up at Double or Nothing? All these Easter eggs people trying to figure out and trying to find out. It's great, you know what? Because it leaves the door open for not being able to predict something. How many times, Jeff, have you and I gone back and forth watching any form of wrestling? And sometimes we look at it like, oh, that's so predictable. We knew that was going to happen. We're not trying to be smart marks, but just the writings on the wall, that's where they're leading to. And with something like this, you don't know. I like to think it's going to lead towards the fact that, yes, Impact has that ability, but ultimately I think it might be AEW. I could be wrong, but my gut's telling me AEW.
I could be wrong. I'm probably not. It could be. It could happen.
No, but listen, I'm going to stand by what I say here. No offense to Dave, but you know what? Impact is a possibility. I'm leaning more towards AEW, but I wouldn't be surprised if Impact got him. And what a huge stamp that would be for Impact Wrestling to get Jon Moxley, because you know what? He just has so much momentum behind him. But here's the thing, and something we've always talked about before, and you spoke about it too when you did the pressers for Impact during WrestleMania weekend. The main thing I think most talent have nowadays, especially when they separate themselves from WWE, is they want creative freedom. They want the ability to embrace their character and have that direction. They don't mind being pointed and steered in certain directions, but they want impact in terms of what they're, pun intended there, but they want investment in what they're doing. So I think that's a huge huge deciding factor what happens ultimately with Jon Moxley.
The funny thing is that Don Callis kind of was asked that question about Dean Ambrose, and he was like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that this could be an introduction of Jon Moxley character in WWE, although I think that's maybe the last of the possibilities.
Yeah,
but,
I don't see that.
AEW, Impact Wrestling, a lot of people kind of scoff at maybe a Ring of Honor stint, but wherever he goes, he's gonna have that fan base, and he's gonna have that one-upsmanship as far as like having the fans backing him, and he's already a name. So whoever gets him on their roster, whether it's part-time or full-time, is going to have a very big asset, for their company in Jon Moxley. All right, Trendsetter, you mentioned the XFL before. XFL games will air on ESPN, ABC, Fox, and FS1 in 2020. So already has one up on the AAF, which unfortunately folded in not even a full year. That includes several primetime Thursday night games on the Fox network, one night before SmackDown Live's regular time slot on the channel, effective in October. According to several reports, the networks will not pay for the XFL a right fee as part of the multi-year deal, but they will pick up the tab for an estimated $400K per game on production costs, which evens it out. Yeah. So, Trendsetter, the stations, the networks don't have to pay a rights fee like for the NFL, because in the NFL you pay like $2 billion, $3 billion for the rights to air the games. Here you kind of even it out. You don't pay rights fees, but you pay for production. A win-win for Vince, I think.
I think so too. In terms of a business standpoint, I think it's win-win, because right now you don't have the track record. I mean, you can't compare this to the old XFL. It's brand new. They've you like to hope they've learned from their mistakes, but ultimately, the partnership here works either way, because you know what, they don't have a track record. They're trying to build a name for themselves, and ultimately, with anything, whether it be sports entertainment, pro wrestling, or in this case the XFL football, what you want basically is the agreement to have exposure. And when you have networks like ESPN, for example, and then Fox Sports, and then ABC, and FS1, you have that. Sorry, Fox. You have that ability now to get your product out there, distributed for so many more eyes to see. Unlike what happened last time, and unlike what happened with the other league, it was AAF, right?
AAF, yeah.
They don't have that exposure. They don't have that ability for people to kind of keep promoting them. So I think a huge win for both sides. For all the networks combining with the XFL, because right now I feel with this is a huge step in my ideas, Jeff, that this is going to work.
Yeah, not a lot of people are fans of football after the Super Bowl. They kind of, okay, anything second to the NFL is second rate. Yeah. But, I believe it does have a chance to succeed.
It's a fair point to make, though.
Yeah, I do believe there are some people that do have that fix for football. And again, though, we are in a gambling society. So if WWE... Well, actually, it's not WWE. It's the XFL and...
two separate things now. They're trying not to join them together.
So if you can make the games competitive, it'll be another platform for gamblers. And let's not sugarcoat it. There is gambling is a huge thing in pro sports. Yeah. So if they can find this, and anyone can bet on this, and with the profile names that they're gonna get as far as coaches and players, then this has a chance to succeed. And when you put ABC, ESPN, FS1, and Fox all together, it's definitely a better start than the AAF, Trendsetter.
Yeah, and you and I always went about it in terms of watching the NFL draft. Like, these are the best players in college football, but not all of them get chosen. So you will have talent now that has another opportunity to not only just play in the Canadian football leagues, but now they can play in the XFL, showcase themselves, and make more of a name for themselves.
All right, Trendsetter, very good news here. One that I wanted to definitely discuss is Marshall and Ross Von Erich signed with MLW, as first reported by SI.com. They will debut for MLW at Fury Road on June 1st. Court Bauer said it is poetic. He noted that they will still be able to wrestle in Israel and Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan. They're fighting for their family name and their future. They represent a new hope and a new chapter in the family's fabled story. If you guys have seen Dark Side of Wrestling, it is a tremendous documentary on Viceland. We've been hooked on it. The Bruiser Brody, the Montreal Screwjob, Macho Man and Elizabeth, and then the death of Gina Hernandez, which again was another one that was off the charts. And when you listen and you hear that Von Erich story, and people call it a tragedy, people call it a curse, to see Kevin Von Erich and the heartbreak and the loss that he's had in his life, to see him be able to now pass the wrestling torch to his sons, it's got to be a feel-good story, man. And MLW, I think, is a great place for them to start honing their craft.
Huge win for MLW in order for this to happen and having a signing like that. I know there are rumors, too, that they were given a tryout by WWE, but turned that down respectfully because they wanted to be closer to home, and this makes perfect sense for them, too. I mean, you look at the Von Erich name, Jeff, and there's so much legacy behind it, but unfortunately, at least for me, from my standpoint, there's always been a lot of negative talk and press behind it too, despite all the great things they've done in their family and their connection to professional wrestling. So to see those two, and when I first saw them, like, these two guys have that look about them. I mean, those Von Erich jeans, man, I need some of those jeans myself. Jesus Christ, it's amazing the look they have. They come from good stock, I guess, but what a look about these two. And I haven't seen much of their work in the ring. But just with the name Von Erich comes a lot of pressure. Makes you curious,
yeah.
But also there's a lot of pressure there, too, to carry the family name. But to look at those two guys, it looks like they carry it with pride. There doesn't seem to be a lot of pressure on them for that, but despite the pressure they put on themselves, I'm really looking forward to something like this because, you know what, hopefully this brings a more positive light in what seemed to be a very daunting and very down, depressing story. But what a great documentary that was, Jeff, we saw before about
all
the Von Erichs.
All of them have been tremendous. There are rumors that they are going to approve a season 2 for Dark Side of the Ring.
I hope so.
And it's just been tremendous documentaries, man. And, of course, the final one will be the one on Fabulous Moolah. So a lot of things to delve into that one. So Gino Hernandez, Bruiser Brody, again, the Von Erichs, the Montreal Screwjob, which was fascinating, and then, of course, the Macho Man and Elizabeth. There's so many more documentaries that you can do, and I'm glad that they might get a second season. Already rumored that they're 75% done with the Dino Bravo story, so that is an interesting one, too, that a lot of people haven't delved into, though, so definitely looking forward to, hopefully, a season 2, but great story in the Von Erich signing with MLW. And Trendsetter, maybe saving the best for last because we really think so highly of this guy, and that is Chris Jericho. This past weekend saw Chris Jericho once again at the center of the pro wrestling world when he showed up unannounced at an indie wrestling event for Southern Honor Wrestling in Georgia, where both he and Kenny Omega made surprise appearances and proceeded to brawl and later be separated, with Kenny Omega having the last laugh. Just hours later, though, on the other side of the world, after Kazuchika Okada defended his IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Sonata, a video package played that showed Chris Jericho challenging Okada for his championship on June 9th at Dominion in Osaka, Japan. It is being billed as the Painmaker versus the Rainmaker. And according to Justin Barrasso of SI.com, Jericho will be paid 6 figures to headline New Japan's second biggest show of the year. What more can you say about Chris Jericho? But man, he continues to reinvent and change the game. And I am looking forward to that dream matchup in Osaka, Japan on June the 9th. And again, Chris Jericho never closed the door about working for New Japan. A lot of people are wondering whether this could open the door for a future partnership between the two companies. Although they are still friends with the Ring of Honor and still have a working relationship, a lot of people believe that New Japan should and eventually partner up with AEW. Although there is no, imminent partnership to be announced or anything like that, this is a great start.
It's a good step in the right direction, if you ask me. I mean, what a huge event right there in Dominion for two, legends, I guess, if you want, speak of them, Chris Jericho and Okada. I go on this all the time thinking, how much more am I going to kiss Chris Jericho's ass? More than I've done already. And it's just amazing, though, because this guy is the last of, in my opinion, Jeff, a dying breed. Now, you could say Kenny's the same way as well, but it's just the last of a dying breed because he's always thinking outside the box and always gives you the ability where we live in a day and age, Jeff, now, social media and things are just exposed and, secrets aren't kept very well, but something like this kept under wraps and now have that excitement of what it was like in the old days for us watching professional wrestling or sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. The mere fact that you didn't expect and didn't see coming, and then it did, and leaves you shocked and surprised. It's amazing. Again, kudos goes out to Chris Jericho. Doesn't need my adulation one bit in terms of what he's done. It's amazing. I didn't think, Jeff, at this point we'd still be seeing him wrestle, because I'd be like, if you ask me, I want to see Chris Jericho wrestle forever, right? But at the same time, you never want to have him a shell of his former self. But that's not a point in terms of what he can do in the ring, what he can still do as an entertainer, what he can still do in terms of creating a story, of having you dare I say, Jeff, invested into something.
Oh, man, what's that like? I don't know,
I have no idea. Well, you know what it's like right now because we're seeing it. Chris Jericho and Okada, just that alone is something that fans want to buy a ticket to and see. So it's definitely going to be a great step in the right direction for a possibility of a partnership. And here's the thing, too, Jeff. We've spoken about this several times. We know New Japan and Ring of Honor are working together. They're in a working relationship. But at the same time, it just, in my opinion, and you've brought reasons why maybe it wouldn't work, but to me, just collectively, we all work together. It's going to just be better ultimately, not only for your promotion, but for the product in general. You don't have to do it every single time, but something like this is amazing. Can you imagine? Jeff, just imagine right now. We could dive into it later on as the story builds up for Dominion. But Jeff, can you imagine if Chris Jericho won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship? How historic that would be in terms of not only full circle in the legacy of his career, but in the world of professional wrestling.
Yeah, Chris Jericho is getting 6 figures and deserves every penny, if not one more, because...
And it's not far-fetched, too, that maybe he would challenge for the 10 pounds of gold, too, down the road.
You never know.
You never know.
Exactly. And they still want to work with Kenny. The main caveat for New Japan would be to dangle Kenny Omega and be able to have him work for New Japan again, because that is the guy that New Japan sorely misses, and that is Kenny Omega. They seem like a perfect fit. And right now, Chris Jericho is doing what he wants to do. He's even selling stuff at his yard in his garage sale, which is freaking amazing. I wish I wish I was in Tampa to get maybe the Jericho Y2J cutout, but man, he is doing whatever he wants, and again, just making noise in the wrestling world.
It's inspiring, man, to see Chris Jericho not only reinvent himself, Jeff, but at the same time, the quote's been said, he walks like a rock star, he expects to be treated like a rock star. He is a rock star, man, not just in music, but in wrestling too.
And the cruise is 80% sold out. So again, Chris Jericho is amazing. You can't say enough about the man. And again, looking forward to not only Double or Nothing, but now Dominion, Osaka, Japan is going to be the Painmaker versus the Rainmaker, and we
love it.
Can't wait. All right, Trendsetter. Now we're talking about Double or Nothing. It is Double or Nothing month here on the High Spot Podcast, and one of the prominent names in AEW, and also a guy who's making a name for himself on being the elite, is Brandon Cutler. We talk about the Battle Royal, the one that's going to be on the pre-show, and we talk about just what he wants to do in this company and what it's like working with the Young Bucks. So without further ado, Brandon Cutler joins the High Spot Podcast on BodySlam.net. All right, Trendsetter, one of the participants for the Casino Battle Royale at Double or Nothing is Brandon Cutler. Brandon, what is going on? How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
So I love your story because we're going to get involved in just your story. But first and foremost, you got a few weeks till Double or Nothing. Is it setting in? Is it a reality? Is it something that, man, like, you can't wait for?
Yeah, I was telling my wife this a little earlier that it feels like it's been the longest so far. Like ever since January when they announced the show and all that, it's been taking forever just to even get to May. And so now that May is here, it's of course going real quick, mostly because my wife's deadlines on making some of the guys' gears. So that's what's kind of making this month go by quick. But yeah, it hasn't honestly set in so much of like, I haven't been thinking of like StarCast or, weekend or the day of the show or like the Rumble too much. But like, I think once I get out there, it's going to sink in real fast.
Now, you were part of All In, the first one, the amazing show. We were there. The electricity was amazing. When was it that you guys started thinking that something like this could be a reality? Your very own wrestling organization, AEW. When did you start thinking that, hey, this just wasn't a one-time thing, it could be more?
That weekend, I know, since I was hanging out with Matt and Nick and Cody for a lot of it, there was definitely a shift within the weekend of like, like the stress of let's just get the show to happen. Like, they sold it out. They don't got to stress about like any of that anymore. It's more like, okay, hopefully people buy it on pay-per-view and let's just get the show through. But then the whole weekend of hanging out with them and how the crowd was responding, even like at that StarCast weekend, everywhere they would walk, they would just get chants from everybody that saw them. They were so happy to just like, there was an electricity even through the whole weekend of the fans were so happy to be there and so happy and appreciative. Anyone that caught them in a moment as the Bucks were walking by, they'd be like, hey man, thanks for this weekend. Thanks for the show. Like, they were just so genuinely happy with what they saw happening with wrestling. So it was kind of a shift in their mindsets throughout that weekend. I noticed that they were like, man, like something's missing in wrestling when everyone on the whole weekend's telling you, thank you so much, I appreciate this weekend. Like, it made it feel like it was a WrestleMania weekend where everyone they already knew that they were going to get what they wanted, kind of a thing. It was almost like they're gratified even that the show hadn't happened yet. And I feel like that's kind of what's already going on with Double or Nothing, is everyone's just happy that there is another company, kind of the whole AEW thing. So I feel like it's going to be a lot of that same feeling of everyone. The show hasn't even gone on yet, and everyone's already kind of like, thank you for doing this.
You know, for me, going back and reflecting back on the events of that seems like a long, huge weekend. Like you're right, you just mentioned, felt like a WrestleMania weekend, although there's no WWE in the works. It was just basically all in and everybody's hard work paying off of people feeling the enthusiasm of professional wrestling. Is there a certain point where you yourself personally felt that there's a shift going on right now? Because it really feels now more than ever. Jeff and I spoke about it last year, how there seems to be a huge boom in professional wrestling because of social media. But nowadays it seems like everybody just wants something different. Did you ever feel one particular moment when that shift started to happen?
Not like I can't pinpoint it like on a day or anything even, but I do remember, just as the Bucks were slowly blowing up more and more and trailblazing, like each new accomplishment they'd get, I would always tell them, like, guys, you guys are on another level of wrestling. Like, it's not just like, oh, you guys are over, or you guys sell merch. It's like they'd get the first Funko Pops that aren't like WWE or something, or they'd get that children's book, or they would get into all of Hot Topics instead of just like some of them, or they'd sell out or something like that, or they were the number one sellers for like Hot Topic and stuff. Every like accomplishment like that, I would always just see it as like, there's something about you guys, or there's something about like that group, like the elite, being the elite, or when they were all Bullet Club, like there's just something about them that like you could see, like, you know, the fans they're voting with their dollars of like what they wanted, and it was getting to where it's very undeniable. Like Cody says, a lot of like there's something like each thing they put out, people would just gobble it up to the point where it was like, it can't just be like shirts anymore. It can't just be like certain merch. It's got to be more like, what shows can we provide for them? And I think that was kind of the basis of All In. And then once All In happened, like, yeah, definitely after the show, I guess was probably one of the main markers of like, what if we kept doing this kind of a thing? Because it happened even with that speech at the end of the show, which none of that's planned. They had no idea what they were going to say when they're out there. It's just they felt, well, you know, they said what they honestly felt. And so it was that of like, they all knew they didn't want that group to get split up. And Cody knew that. So he said that of, you know, this group staying together. Everyone wants to see, you know, the Bucks, Cody, Hangman, Kenny, like all of them stay together, whether it was going to WWE or staying with ROH or branching and doing their own thing. And so you could tell just within that speech of like they're all brimming with what they want to say, but then they're like, well, you know, we can't say everything.
Double or Nothing is May 25th on the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Brandon, just you personally, how fulfilling has this past year or so been for you, being able to work in the backgrounds and now being a part of AEW, being part of All In, being part of this Battle Royal coming up at Double or Nothing, the inaugural first event for AEW? How fulfilling has it been for you personally?
Yeah, that's been extremely fulfilling. This is honestly like my dream job, is to do exactly what I am doing with the company of being a wrestler, but then also like having a hand backstage and just helping in any way I can. And that's been at All In. I did a lot of that. At their press conferences, I've done some of that stuff, like just even in between helping them with being the elite and stuff. It's great because in my book, I'm working with my best friends. You know, I've grown up with the Bucks. I just want to work with them more. And when I got back into wrestling, that was my main goal, is just make it wherever the Bucks are. If they're at ROH, all right, I want to make it to ROH. And if they go to WWE, I better make it. So I got to find my way to WWE, because for me, my goal was I want to make it in wrestling to where I could support my family with it. And then like the top of it would be, like the icing on the top would be if I can work alongside with the Bucks, wherever it was, because they're just my best friends. So it would be like, yeah, of course I want to go to a happy workplace and be able to hang out with them, you know, on those long road days, or days were just you're just on the road, doing wrestling, or you're at the venues for 10 hours. So I was like, yeah, what better way to spend it than with your best friend?
Brandon, something that I found pretty interesting in terms of your story and what's taken for you to get there is that, you basically, this was a passion of yours. You left it for several years, about maybe 7 years, and then came back. I kind of want to know from you, what led to you to kind of want to, for example, put a kind of a stomp on it for a little bit, and then what kind of inspired you to want to get back into it? Was it the Young Bucks? Was it your friends involved in it? What inspired you to get back into it, but also what drove you to kind of want to take a break from it?
There was a lot of factors on both sides of that, of leaving and coming into it. Mostly leaving, it was because I just wasn't able to start a family or be serious in a relationship. You start dating someone, it's like, oh, what do you do? Well, I only work a part-time job because I'm trying to, make it in wrestling, kind of a thing. And so it's kind of like, yeah, you're never getting taken serious. You can't really even how do you prove you're gonna be able to supply for a family or be taken serious to be in further relationships? So that's how I kind of was starting to see wrestling is and I wasn't necessarily moving constantly in wrestling. I think that when I was in PWG for those 2 or even 2.5 years, that I just got stagnant. I wasn't going anywhere. And so I saw it as okay, that's kind of a sign of maybe I felt I was good, but I was like, maybe it's so hard to make it in wrestling at that point back in 2010 and 2011. I was like, am I going to be one of those guys that's been around for 10 years and I've never gone anywhere? And then is it going to be that I'll never have a family too, because it's just, I'm clinging on to this dream. So those were the main things for me of getting out. And then in that 7 years, I met my wife and we were just a nerd couple. We'd go to Comic Cons and stuff like that. And it kind of just helped me just live a good life of oh yeah, I don't need wrestling. This is way better than anything wrestling could give me of, having a wife and then having our 2 kids. And then it was when she was pregnant with our second kid, I was able to hang out with the Bucks a little bit more because they were also so busy during that time. I didn't hang out with them too often. And so that kind of rekindled it of when you hang out with them, what else are you going to talk about other than wrestling? And so when I would just have chats with them, it would bring it back to me of oh man, I do miss those days. Those were fun. And then that we were having our second kid and we knew all right, we're done having kids. We don't want more. I was like, maybe I would be able to have time to even just jump back in. And I was just going to give it a shot of I don't necessarily care if I make it. That'd just be a fun hobby to have again. And I'll go into that mindset of I don't necessarily got to make it. I just want to hang out with the Bucks again or something, or just be able to chat wrestling. And then it kind of started just igniting, definitely with a little bit of their help and stuff. But it was just fun again, enjoying wrestling and not worrying about, am I going to make it somewhere? Because I already had my own gym I was running, so I could support my family, and then I was closed on weekends, so that means I can wrestle on all the weekends. So that's kind of some of the factors that brought it back. And my wife was really supportive, getting back into it because she was a performer. She did some theater stuff in college, and so she understood that whole when you're a performer, you want to perform kind of a thing. You want to entertain in some aspect. And so, and that she makes gear. She would make all of our cosplays when we go to conventions. So then she was like, man, I can make your gear, and kind of a thing. And that just blew up from there. She made my gear. And then the Bucks mentioned of hey, why don't you make something for us? And so she made theirs, and they're like, this is better than a lot of stuff we usually get. Why don't you just start constantly making our stuff? Wow. And then that blew up because then SCU saw it, and they were like, man, that's really good stuff because she makes stuff for us. And so I was like, oh man, maybe wrestling is calling for us, kind of a thing. You're definitely wanted for your gear, and maybe I could kind of start making it and as a wrestler, and then I could quit my and close my normal day job, and then boom, we could just be a wrestling family.
Wow, talk about a match made in heaven, Brandon. It seems like everything kind of worked itself out. I mean, you talk about cosplay. What's been your favorite cosplay outfit so far that you've gone to when you've gone to Comic-Con?
Our first ones we did was Superman and Wonder Woman.
Nice.
And then we also did Gambit and Rogue. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's a show called Critical Role. They play Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch and stuff. And so we also did a couple of characters from there called Bex and Grog. And so they're a barbarian and an archer elf lady.
So, Brandon, by association, you being more prominent on being the elite, obviously your phone has blown up a little bit more. How have you been able to deal with that, with more demand for you? How's that going?
It's going pretty well. It's still manageable. I haven't gotten to the point, I'm nowhere near Bucks level kind of stuff of, like, they're constantly, anytime we're chatting, they're like, my phone doesn't stop. They're like, I have to recharge it in the middle of the day just from, like, calls and texting people. That kind of a thing. So I'm nowhere near them. I'm like, I'd say the thing that's gone up a lot is, like, I do have more followers, and so I'll have more likes on a lot of my posts, but, like, that's nothing too bad. Like, it's not unmanageable, where if somebody's commenting on my stuff, I could still usually chit-chat back with them, which I love to do. I love chit-chatting, talking about wrestling or any of that, nerdy stuff. If I ever see some of my cosplay stuff, they'll usually comment on it, too. So I'm like, hey, cool, you recognized it.
So where did you get your love of wrestling? What did you grow up on? The Attitude Era? Were you a WCW guy, WWE guy? What was your entrance into pro wrestling? What was that like?
It was WCW growing up. We always had, me and my brother, we had our favorites. Mine was DDP and like Sting, and my brother's was Nash. And then our dad loved Sid Vicious. And so when Sid dropped that line of, I may have half the brain you do.
Classic.
We always use that against our dad of like, that's your favorite guy. So yeah, that was kind of our household growing up, was very much WCW. And then I want to say maybe a year before WWE bought WCW is when we started getting, like, we'd switch back and forth to just see what was happening on each show. But we'd mostly just stick with WCW. It's just we wanted to know what was going on the other show too. And then, yeah, that was a huge, game changer for everyone in wrestling, is when WWE bought WCW. So like that's the era that you could say like defined and we grew up on. And I continued watching wrestling all the way up until like I left it for that break up until like 2011. And then that's where I went cold turkey. I didn't even watch WWE or anything during that 2011 time. I call it my young buck bubble, where the only thing I knew going on in wrestling was whatever they were doing. It was just like, I followed them, or I'd keep up, touch with them and text them. So it was whoever they were wrestling or whatever company they were with is kind of just what I knew about. But yeah, very much so. Like that defined how I look at wrestling, and what I love about wrestling was the WCW and Attitude Era, or the Ruthless Aggression Era in WWE.
Yeah, some pretty fine eras there, Brandon, to be talking about too. And we like to talk about the golden age of wrestling when WCW and WWE were pitted against each other. It just made for great competition and great moments for us, the fans, watching it. Real quick, I wanted to ask you this question because I always find it interesting. You grew up obviously a fan of wrestling. You loved it, have gotten involved in the business, took a break from it, went back into it. There's no question there's passion in your voice when you're talking about it, though. But when you see wrestling nowadays, whether you're watching stuff from like the Bucks, being the elite, getting ready for Double or Nothing, or watching it outside of watching Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, stuff like that, do you see it now differently? Do you still see it in the eyes of the fans? Do you see it in the eyes of what the performers look at right now? What's your perspective now when you look at pro wrestling?
I do kind of see it with all of those different eyes at different times, because when I watch matches for, say, if I got how this Battle Royale is coming up, I'll usually watch matches of whoever I have matches with. Like if I'm in a 4-way, I'll watch the other 3 guys' stuff just to get familiar with them. And when I watch like that, I'm very much watching mostly as like a performer of like, okay, well, what's that guy do? Or what's some of his more complicated moves or like segments he might do or something. But then when I'm watching something like Impact or something with the Bucks, I'm totally fanning out. Like when I watched the Bucks against Golden Lovers for New Japan, I think that was a Long Beach show, I was totally a fan. I got emotional. I got a little teary-eyed during that. I didn't see it. You can never, once you know stuff, you can't turn it off of, when they execute a move great, you still oh, very nice. You took that great kind of a thing. But, you could still switch right back into the enjoyment of, the thing. Or when I see freaking Phoenix doing some Spanish flies and almost breaking his neck, I do the, oh! So there's still I watch most matches with still very many different eyes like that, but I don't rob myself of enjoying a match kind of a thing. There are some times where it is just oh man, they must have not gave this guy anything. If the segment's too short, or there's some of that sometimes interferes, but for the most part, I let myself watch like as a fan, because that's how I kind of like to look at myself of when I'm making something in a match that I'm like, I want to have something memorable. I think of it as a fan of like, what would be like kind of notable, like, you know, what would somebody remember me by when they go to the end of the night, or what would be a cool visual for the fans to kind of see, if it's like how I might do a coast to coast or something of like, that might be a cool thing if you see a guy flying from one side of the ring to the other side. So I like to kind of think of that style of like, what would the fans like want to see? If you're going to a live action stunt show and you see like there's this huge rig or something, you'd be like, well, somebody's going to fly off of that. Like, you want to see it.
Brandon, we found out the rules for the Casino Battle Royale. Basically, 21 wrestlers over the top rope rules. Starts with 5 guys. Every 3 minutes, a new wave of 5 enter, and there will be a lucky 21, which is only 1 entrant. How important for you is it to get that lucky 21 spot?
That's obviously the most notable one to get. I mean, you get this grand entrance coming out by yourself, and then best odds in winning the match. I mean, most likely there's already going to be a few guys already eliminated by the time that guy comes in. So it is the biggest deal to have if you come out with that. And I just loved how they kind of came up with that whole idea. That was really interesting when they dropped that.
Yeah, very creative, you guys. And one thing that I've noticed is that you guys, again, you have the pulse of the fans in mind, right? And I think right now when we talk about ratings and networks and money and all that stuff, and when we get to you and the Bucks and Kenny and Cody, one thing that I really point to as you guys having success is being relatable and connecting with the fans, because you guys are always there to talk to the fans and be personable. It's like they know you on an intimate level. Talk about how important that is for you guys as a company starting up, to have that relatability with the fans, because you guys are basically going through social media to, pump interest in Double or Nothing. Talk about just the relatability with the fans and being personable with them.
Yeah, you're completely right with that. And that's something I noticed during that StarCast weekend that I never got to see with the Bucks before, is how personable they are with their fans. Of like, there'd be fans that they would know by name or like by certain stories and stuff. They're like, oh, you're the person that gave us like these gifts, like back at that show. I'm like, how do you guys remember that stuff? Like, it's an awesome gesture that they do that, but I can't remember what I got for Christmas last year even. But like they just make it a point to remember, especially it's easy to remember their hardcore fans, but they remember a lot of fans. I'm like, that's a huge net to to remember. And then I saw it again on some of their signings that I got to just go and just help out at again, that I'd be like, dang, like some of these people are here from like that other show. Like I'm starting to notice them now. And like they just know them all, and they're just really personable. They'll ask how like people are doing and like how their day is going, if they're enjoying their weekend. It's not just like, oh, hey, how you doing? And like sign their thing and move on. Like they make it a point to have a little bit of chit chat with everybody. And that's what I was kind of noticing too. I think was also like that shift that people notice with the Bucks and like Kenny and Cody, is that they take that extra amount of time to just be like personable and a human to you, and not just like, oh, I know you see me as a superstar, I don't got to do anything. Like they know, like if they get hardcore fans, like they'll be successful in anything they do, and it's just much more rewarding is what I think they see it as well, because they're sitting there signing thousands of things that will go out to like sell on like high spots or something, but they see it as like, how cool would it be as a fan to get that kind of a thing? Like they sold All In turnbuckle. Like how awesome of a piece of memorabilia is that, to have an All In turnbuckle with the whole like kind of cast signature on it. Like they very much go with that. Like Cody sold like the ring and stuff, so it's like that's stuff like how I think of as a fan of that. Like, how cool would that be to have that chunk of a thing? You could go back and watch that show and be like, yep, there it is. There's that chunk that I got.
For me, being a fan of professional wrestling, being a fan and also admiring what you guys do from a day-to-day basis, because it's a huge grind. I always go about it, and I speak with Jeff, and I speak with several talent promoters and things of that nature, speaking to the fans too, that if it's easy, everyone would do it. It takes a special type of person to be able to go in the ring and do what you guys do on a daily basis. For events building up for Double or Nothing, though, question I want to ask you, Brandon, is the mere fact that with everything built up, you kind of spoke about it early on when Jeff asked you the question, though, but you think there'll be a moment where you'll be able to kind of embrace it? Because, careers go up and down. When it comes to events like this, everybody's going a million miles per hour. Everybody's being pulled in so many directions. Will you feel you'll have the opportunity to kind of embrace it or enjoy it? Or have you had that ability to kind of embrace and enjoy the ride, the journey, getting to the destination, which is the MGM Grand?
Yeah, no, I definitely make it a point to, like, I even actively tell myself in my head, like, enjoy this kind of a thing. Like, when I was out there for that Battle Royale at All In, the entire time we're walking out, somebody took a couple of pictures of me that I've saved. You could just see it on my face as I'm just like a kid in wonder. I'm walking out and scanning that crowd. Man, like, you were there, you guys saw, like, that's just magnificent to see a sea of people like that. And, like, you could just feel it. Of, like, they're giddy, they want to chant, they want to cheer, like, they're happy that they're there at the show. They know they're privileged because it was hard to get tickets, same as this Double or Nothing. Like, so there's that energy of, like, when you're there in the audience, you're just like, I'm one of the people that got a ticket. Like, there's so many people that want to get tickets here, and here I am. Like, I got a ticket to this. I'm seeing it live and before anyone else does, because when you get to come in and sit down, you're seeing the set, you're seeing the ring, like, you're seeing the whole field before it even goes live on air. And so there's just something magic about that of, like, of a live show that you get to see. And, like, I would try and note, like, while we were all standing outside of the ring waiting for, like, the Battle Royale to start, I was still just, like, looking around. I wasn't even looking towards the ring. Like, my back was faced to it, and I was just looking at the crowd, just, like, scanning and being like everyone here is happy. Like, not just even looking at a big field view. I was, like, trying to look at individual people that were out there. With that mindset of, like, enjoy this now, because when you start the match, you're not going to be thinking about any of that while you're doing it. And then I got to do it again, actually. I was one of Joey Ryan's dick druids. And so I was like, hey, now I could go out there with, like, no pressure because, I'm in a dick suit. So I could go out there and while they're doing the whole bit with Hangman and him, I was by the ring, and I remember looking across the ring and seeing John Mayer sitting there. And I was like, what is this life that I have? I'm sitting here in a dick suit. John Mayer's on the other side of this wrestling ring while Joey Ryan's, like, dick flipping Hangman. I was like, this is a wild life I got right now.
Dreams come true.
Definitely.
Dreams come true.
Definitely let myself enjoy those moments. And then the same when we're filming, like, Being the Elite and stuff, I'll usually just film stuff for myself. Like, I won't even, like, the guys will see me and I'll be like, oh, no, this isn't going online anything. I'm not going to, like, post this, but I'm like, it's just moments for, like, me, for, like, when I look back at stuff and be like, oh, yeah, that's when that scene was shot. Or, like, that's how it kind of looked, in that area when we were just hanging out in a green room or something.
So, Brandon, who's the real librarian? Is it Leva Bates or Peter Avalon? Which is which? Are we going to find out at Double or Nothing, or what?
I got to meet Peter Avalon, so I know he's definitely a librarian, but I don't know about the whole Cody signing Leva Bates. I haven't seen any of that in person. That would be interesting if they're both at Double or Nothing.
I mean, you can't have two librarians, can you?
Well, I mean, if you do a male and female, fine, but it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be awesome if they gotta, fight it out. That'd be great to see. And you know, Brandon, just Hangman Page has made it a mission to not only be ready to be in full gear by the show, but he wants to be, the first ever world champion for AEW. What are your goals in AEW?
First goal is to just be able to provide my family with, provide a good life for my family. Because at the moment, honestly, we're just getting by. I'm not living fancy. I'm not living in anything. We got a family of 4, and we have a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. So
yeah.
You can imagine how insane that bathroom is. But, it's kind of that stuff of, just make enough money to upgrade our life. And, maybe we rent a house, so it's maybe we could buy a house and have 2 bathrooms, and each kid will have their own room. That's honestly the main goal, is just make enough money that I can upgrade our lives for the most part. And then I'll have, I'm sure, other goals of I honestly want to be a Grand Slam champ. I'd love to be able to hold their tag titles if they got them, like a secondary title if they got it, the world title. I'd love to hold all of them. That's going to come in due time. I don't got to worry about that stuff just yet. I'm more thinking let's get that first stretch goal of let's get a better home for my family.
All right, Brandon Cutler joins us here on the High Spot Podcast on bodyslam.net. You can follow him on Twitter at Brand Cutler. He is one of the participants of the Casino Battle Royale. And go meet him at StarCast, a meet and greet on that Friday, 5/24 from 1 to 3 p.m. Tickets are available at starcast.com. Go support the man, buy a wrestling shirt. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/Brandon Cutler. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Any messages you want to give out the fans here about AEW Double or Nothing coming up in a few weeks?
You're not going to want to miss it. I can promise you that.
All right, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Trendsetter, that was Brandon Cutler. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Brand Cutler. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/Brandon Cutler. Pick up a shirt, show support, and he will be there at StarCast meet and greet May 24th from 1 to 3 p.m. So go to StarCast.com, get tickets, and make sure you say what's up to Brandon Cutler, Trendsetter. All right, so we did our top 5 headlines, and I did tease this, and something that I was, after watching Rebellion, that I really felt very compelled to talk about was the top 5 tag teams that are not in WWE. Of course, WWE is having some problems with the Revival because they haven't signed a long-term extension, so they're kind of being made a fool of. You got the Usos, who to me are the class of the tag team division. Unfortunately, the Hardys had to give up their SmackDown tag team championships. We'll see what it's like with Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan as the new SmackDown Live tag team champions. See how that works out. But Trendsetter, when you think of top tag teams that are not in the WWE, and we've been lucky to go to a lot of events like All In, Double or Nothing, which we will head down to and see Ring of Honor and the G1 Supercard. When you think of the top 5 teams, is it easy for you to list them, or do you still have trouble finding maybe a top 5?
Honestly, not really. Do I know enough tag teams for there to be a top 5? That might be the difficult thing, but no, I think there's so many talented tag teams. And tag team wrestling, Jeff, is something that I enjoy more than anything. I was huge fans of tag team wrestling growing up as a kid. Love the Hart Foundation, the Rockers, the Bulldogs, the Killer Bees, the Von Erichs to a degree, and just the list goes on and on. That's just naming a few, and doesn't do it justice, the list that I just named, which is why it's so difficult to come up with the top 5. To me, there's so many talented tag teams out there right now, not just in the world of WWE, but when you look at Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, MLW, the list goes on in terms of promotions around the world of great tag teams that have yet to build their name. But first thing that jumps off the top of my head, Jeff, would have to be the Young Bucks. That goes with that question. I'm sure everybody talks about, they're the greatest tag team out there. To me, the Young Bucks have proven the mere fact that sometimes when you look at tag team wrestling, I always looked at it as a staple of when you have tag team wrestling and competition out there, it's very easy to start finding out and weeding out, all right, who's going to be the star if you wanted to split this team up. But I think with the Young Bucks, you don't have that issue because they want to be together. And I think now the evolution of tag team wrestling has changed. People are not looking at it as a stepping stone, as a singles career. Majority of them are just looking at, this is what I want to do. I want to be in a tag team. I don't really care about doing anything independently from this, and they're happy with that, and you see it in the ring. But for me, Jeff, first and foremost, has to be Young Bucks is one of the top teams out there that's not currently in WWE.
All right, so, I put this out on Twitter, and some of the fans actually got back to us here, and we actually now can do this and talk to our fans and have them listen to. So here's what at Kodiak69 had to say, okay? The top 5 in his order are Guerrillas of Destiny, GOD, the Briscoes, the Young Bucks at 3, SCU at 4, and LAX at 5. So that's a good one right there, too. Mm-hmm. And, it's just amazing what people think. So now, here we go, another one at Marincast_Chaos. His top 5 would be the Young Bucks, Lucha Bros, Aussie Open, Evil, and Sonata, and the Rascals. So that would be their his
Rascals,
top 5.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Evil and Sonata, too, is one that didn't jump in my head right away.
Yeah, so there are tons of tag teams out there. And so I'm going to give you my top 5, and you'll be surprised who I have as honorable mention, because I was thinking it was easy to me because I can name you 5, but one I had to leave out because of just they haven't wrestled in a while. So here's my top 5. Number 1, LAX, a tremendous matchup against the Lucha Bros at Rebellion. They get the top spot. Then GOD, a tremendous job at G1 Supercard, and again, they continue to be relevant, and they're on the War of the Worlds tour this week for Ring of Honor New Japan. So again, they're making headlines. The tailgate, the Bullet Club Block Party, which is a success. So I'm going to go with GOD at 2. I'm going to go the Lucha Bros at 3. Newly signed to AEW, they'll be competing for the CMLL Tag Team titles at Double or Nothing. They were the Impact Wrestling Tag Team champions in a tremendous matchup. They lost to LAX, but still, they've been amazing. So I'm going to go Lucha Bros at 3. The Briscoes at number 4. And you know what? I'm going to go at 5. PCO and Brody King. They won the NWA Tag Team Championships at the Crockett Cup. They've had a tremendous 2019. They're the the 6-man tag team champions in Ring of Honor. And I'm going to have honorable mention right now, the Bucks. The Bucks have to prove to me upcoming. They had a long layoff. And they've said that they needed it to re-energize their batteries.
Well deserved long layoff, though.
So, but I need to see them again get in the top 5. So for that, just for not wrestling the last few months, I'm gonna go with the Bucks. Put them on the outside at number 6. Even though they are the CML champions, when they did wrestle, I will say that they are number 6. So they get the honorable mention. They'll have to in the next few months prove to me that they should be back in the top 5. Wait, listen, I know Brandon Cutler is gonna kick my ass, but I do believe that the Young Bucks are definitely top 10.
And
so
I
we'll
would
see
love
what
to
happens
see that,
there.
yes.
Yeah, you would love to see that. How about you, Trendsetter? What would you rank your teams?
Well, unlike you, I don't really have an honorable mention right now per se, and I'm kind of surprised you put the Young Bucks at 6. But for me, number 1 is obviously the Young Bucks because, you want to talk about their long layoff. Okay, we can look at their long layoff for good reason why they're taking it, building up this new promotion. So they've been kept pretty busy.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I look at the foundation, the track record they've built for themselves. Goes to that question of the work they can do in the ring. Even though they've had a 2-month layoff, they can still go out there and work the magic they do in the ring with every tag team they go out there. And huge indication why I think of them so high is because they make every other team around them, not taking any talent away from the other teams, but make them so much better and elevate their game even more. So that's why I put the Young Bucks at number 1. Number 2, I got to put it for the Briscoes. The Briscoes, one of the guys you never want to meet in a dark alley, but at the same time, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet as well. You see their passion, their grit. They really bring a combination, Jeff, of strong style, which you see in Japan, but also for bringing it to the United States, just a grittiness where you'll see the technical wrestling, the technical aspect, the high aerial moves, but they're more of they don't want to wrestle. They want to fight you. And that's something that I think is so different from teams nowadays that everybody's about being a technical wrestling team or a high-flying team. They are a team that wants to fight you and wants to beat you down. So I respect the Briscoes for that. So I have them at number 2. Number 3, I'll have, guys that we've had on the show before and guys that tremendously respect. And I think the ceiling is they're not even close to the ceiling of what their potential could be, and that's LAX. The mere fact that, what they've done, not only in the indie scene, but what they've done in Impact and where, whether they plan on going, we don't know, but we've seen them against the Young Bucks on the Jericho Cruise. My God, I was standing up the entire time because obviously there are no seats on the deck, but I was on the edge, if I had a seat, of my seat.
Of my seat
that
deck.
amazing. Of my seat deck, exactly. I almost got tipped over in the ocean because it was that exciting. But, LAX is proven time and time again, man, they are the real deal. You don't remember who the other guys were in LAX, no offense to them. This team has definitely come to itself full circle. Number 4 would have to be, for me, the Lucha Bros. I haven't seen them a lot, but when I have seen them, my goodness, man, this team, there's a certain thing when you put 2 guys together, you're like, okay, you're putting them together for the sake of, because you haven't figured out what you want to do with them. But these 2 click. They have so much chemistry with each other. It's amazing. You think they've done it for their whole lives, and I just love their ability of combining not only the aerial tactics of the Lucha Libre style, but also just making it more to the point where it's not just that. It's just the timing. And again, they're another team that I compare to similar maybe with the Young Bucks, that they just make the other teams they're working with so much better. And number 5, Who the fuck is you? I gotta say I gotta say God. I gotta say the Gorillas of Destiny are number 5 too. They somewhat remind me of the Briscoes to the extent they're definitely a unique style to themselves, and I just think they have such a huge following and have done tremendous stuff for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Here's the thing: I have a question of God though. I would like to see where it leads them outside of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Yeah. Because all these other teams, they've been in other promotions, they've been around the world, and granted, it's not just because you're sticking with one promotion detracts any terms of what your quality is in terms of in the ring. But with the Gorillas of Destiny, just haven't seen enough of them working with other teams outside Japan. I would love to see them with the Briscoes. I'd love to see them go against the Young Bucks again. I'd love to see them go against the Lucha Brothers. I'd love to see them go against LAX. To me, that's where I have them in number 5. But still, at the same time, top 5 is top 5. And those are the top 5 teams for me that I think are the best teams right now. It doesn't have to mean that the best technical in-ring teams, but the best teams right now that people out there want to see.
Yeah, so another one, too, here from Twitter, CPBuff22 goes to us and said, God at number 1, the Young Bucks 2, Lucha Brothers 3, the Briscoes 4, LX 5. So it seems like those teams are kind of in the mix there. Yeah. And, of course, PCO, Brody King, Evelyn Sonata was a great one there, too, as well, from Los Ingobernables de Japón. So that's a great team there in New Japan. So many teams. But, again, the top 5, you kind of got, some of the names there are going to be, there in everybody's top 5, though, so Trendsetter. So glad to do this every single month. We'll think of a top 5 here and change it up here on the High Spot Podcast. But, folks, listen, follow us on all our social media at High Spot Podcast. Also, listen to us on Spreaker, iTunesRadio.com. Tune in everywhere podcasts are available. You can listen to the High Spot Podcast. Also, listen to us on our YouTube, youtube.com/High Spot Podcast. Like and subscribe to our video episodes as well as the Adventures with the Trendsetter. Like and subscribe. Also, guys, support the crew. Go to ProWrestlingTees.com and buy a High Spot Podcast t-shirt. Look good for the summer. Be part of the crew. Go to ProWrestlingTees.com/High Spot Podcast. And also, we are sponsored by Collar and Elbow. It is an apparel brand founded by Al Snow, mixing wrestling passion with street fashion. Check out the entire summer fashion line, including brand new shirts and women's tees. You got to go to collarandelbowbrand.com. Save 10% on your entire online purchase just by entering promo code High Spot Podcast. Trendsetter, so happy that Daniel Bryan is back. We were worried about his injuries and wanted to make sure that he's okay. Well, he's more than okay now. He's a SmackDown Live Tag Team Champion with Eric Rowan, so glad for that. And also, too, guys, make sure you're following with Ring of Honor New Japan War of the Worlds Tour. This weekend they will be at Grand Rapids, Michigan, culminating on Mother's Day in Chicago, Illinois. And we want to wish the mothers out there a very happy Mother's Day from the High Spot Podcast. Trendsetter, great show. Great having you back in the fold. Hope you're doing better, and we can't wait. We are on the road to Double or Nothing, May 25th at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Trendsetter, next week, another show. We will preview Money in the Bank. Man, Trendsetter, but still, good to have you back.
Well, it's good to be back, guys, and you've been listening to the High Spot Podcast. So, for my tag team partner, Jeff Martin, I am the Trendsetter. We are the Jersey Writing Crew. We thank you so much for listening to this episode. We will catch you guys next week. And remember, whether I'm here or Jeff's here, we do this for one reason, and one reason only. If you haven't figured it out by now, we do this for you, the crew.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.